Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Human Trafficking in View, the podcast where we explore the complexities of human trafficking and share knowledge and inspire action. I'm Laura, and I'm here with my co host, Sam.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for tuning in again. In our previous episode, we had talked about how the hospitality industry intersects with human trafficking. Today, we're diving into something practical and crucial, which is how you can spot the signs of human trafficking.
Yeah, exactly, Sam. So, recognizing the signs of human trafficking can be the first step in saving someone's life. Trafficking doesn't always look like what you typically see in the movies, it can be really subtle and hidden, and especially in plain sight. So, that's why it's really important to be aware of the red flags and to know what to do if you suspect someone is being trafficked.
Exactly, Laura. The signs can vary depending on the type of trafficking, whether it's labor trafficking or sex trafficking or domestic servitude, organ trafficking. But let's start by discussing some general indicators that kind of apply across the different forms of trafficking.
Yeah. So one of the most common signs is if somebody appears to be under the control of another person. So this might look like someone who's not allowed to speak for themselves or who seems unusually fearful or submissive around certain individuals. They might avoid things like eye contact, seem anxious, or be constantly looking for approval from someone else.
And places you might see that behavior in hotel lobbies, in airports, in nail salons. If you like to get your nails done, and I definitely do, if you find that your nail tech is unable to speak to you directly and someone answers for them when you ask questions, or they don't know English, even though they would have had to pass the nail tech exam. Um, these are ways that that specific type of control can show itself in plain sight in the community. Another sign is if someone doesn't seem to have control over their own identifications, like passports or ID, because traffickers often take these documents to prevent victims from leaving or seeking help. So if someone tells you that their passport is being held by someone, then that's one absolutely major red flag. And this can happen, for example, if someone is checking in to a room at a hotel and they're asked for their ID. And, obviously, a lot of times when I check in, I might have my daughter and my husband's passport with me, but oftentimes we'll give it back, right? But if the person need someone else to present and hold their passport, that's a red flag to definitively look for.
Yeah, exactly. And something else that you might also notice is if somebody is working in kind of really unsafe conditions or is working excessively long hours without breaks. Labor trafficking victims often live in poor conditions and are working these like really long hours. And they're not paid, or they're paid far less than what was originally promised. So if you see someone who seems to be in this situation, especially if they're looking isolated from others or kept under strict supervision, it's probably worth taking a closer look.
Yeah, because you will see this happen in real life in agricultural settings, on farms, people who are doing landscaping work or working at carnivals, that kind of thing, where they don't seem to have the right gear, right?
Mm.
Last year at Super Bowl, we found children who were working on roofing projects, right? And they were working on helping put roofs on really tall buildings, right? And falling off and getting no assistance because they basically were not, didn't even have any safety equipment, right? So shoes,
Mm.
hard hats, and that kind of thing. And if you see that happening, then that's definitely a red sign that you should report. Physical signs are also quite telling, like
Mm.
signs of abuse, bruises. If you're in the medical profession and, people are coming in with, we had a case where the young boy stepped on a piece of rebar and it went right through his foot because he didn't have the appropriate boots and shoes to wear.
Mm.
Also things like malnutrition or other untreated medical conditions. The victim can also appear unusually tired or withdrawn, which can be showing signs of trauma. So, if you see this, right, particularly, like I said, construction sites and manufacturing plants, agricultural spaces, so pickers and people in animal husbandry type roles, do they have the equipment? Are they barefoot? Are they wearing flip-flops? These are all signs. Do they even have a hat to protect them from the sun, right? So it's this type of thing that we want to be looking out for.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing that we really wanted to cover is like in cases of sex trafficking, you might notice that someone is really inappropriately dressed for their age or the situation that they're currently in, or that they're being moved around frequently between different locations. They may have a large number of visitors or be picked up and dropped off by many different people at very odd hours of the day or night. And another red flag is if someone is working in a place that does seem to be quite suspicious, like a massage parlor or a hotel room, especially if they themselves seem to be really like nervous and uneasy generally.
Yeah. The biggest things that we see um are in terms of dressed inappropriately. It's winter and they don't have a coat or a hat or gloves. A few years ago, Super was in Minnesota and the young ladies were out on the street and it was literally negative 20 Fahrenheit
Mm.
and no hat, no gloves. Some had a coat, some did not. And they can't come in out of the cold till they meet their minimum quota. So it was $300 to come in out of the cold and 1,000 to come in for the night. And if they don't meet the quota, they got to stay out there. And, I couldn't manage on the street for 5 minutes, forget hours, right? And
Mm.
it's that kind of thing that you want to be looking for in the lobbies of hotels. Also, airports, right? If someone's in the airport and all they have with them is a plastic bag of their belongings, these are also things to sort of look for where it just seems out of place, right? Another thing to watch for is their story. So if you ask them, where are you from? And the story just doesn't seem to add up, or that there's a lot of inconsistent details about the situation, or they seem confused about their location or where they're going or where they're coming from. Often traffickers control what victims say. So if the responses seem rehearsed, that's something to consider. And if they seem out of place, it's also something to consider. We were once working the airport during a big sporting event, and people were coming in, and a gentleman with two children was meeting every woman that came off the plane. He did this for 12 hours, and every time the woman came off the plane, the little kids would run up and hug her and say, "Hi, mom, good to see you." And then he would put her on an airport shuttle and then come back and wait for the next one. So, they can, and if you're just there to pick someone up and you see that once, it's not a weird thing. But because we were there to work the event, we saw it happen multiple times, and that was very unusual. And so obviously it was reported, but it is so important to take notice of what's happening because again, they were controlling the children to say hi mom to everyone and the women to respond to that and then get on the bus. So, such an odd occurrence, right?
Yeah, exactly. And as you said, like if you see that once, you'd almost never notice that it happened. But once you've seen it a couple of times, like it becomes so obvious to you that this is definitely a case of trafficking and something that really needs to be looked into. I think it's also important for us to consider like the context of situations. So, for example, if you're in a setting where there are a lot of vulnerable populations, such as migrant workers, runaways, or homeless individuals, there is a higher risk of trafficking. So being aware of the environment and like the specific risks associated with it can really help you spot the signs of trafficking more effectively.
Absolutely, Laura. I came out of the Hammersmith station last week and saw a young lady with her dog, and she was sitting on the floor hacking up a lung. She was quite ill.
Mm.
And she had put her coat on her dog, which was a fairly large dog. And I stopped to talk to her because it didn't make sense to me that she would be, begging in this ill condition. And she's struggling to get words out, right, between all the coughing.
Mm.
But she was explaining to me that if she didn't pander and collect enough money to go into a warm place that night, and apparently the hostels charge between 10 and 20 pounds a night, then she was going to have to go turn some tricks in order to get the money. And she was trying to avoid that because she has
Mm.
nowhere to leave her dog when she's turning tricks, right? So it was, first of all, so very sad. And on top of needing, money for the night, somebody did buy her like immediate food from the Popeyes. And we, of course, supplied her with groceries and dog food and other things like that. And, but she was safe for that night. But the thing is, the choices in that situation are almost impossible to make, right? Which is the worst of that situation? And
Yeah.
she has, to pay her trafficker if she wants to be off the streets, right? So she's got to make her quotas. And it's that kind of thing that we kind of have to think about with the vulnerable populations, because when we see them, we've got to talk to them to get more of the story, because not every sign is a definitive indicator of trafficking, but
Yeah.
multiple signs, right, are where it comes together. And you got to trust your instincts, right? So for me, it didn't make sense that she would be that sick and still sitting on the sidewalk kind of thing. So that
Mhm.
was the flag for me. But we just have to take action when our instincts tell us to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, next steps in terms of taking action, what can you actually do in terms of if you suspect somebody is being trafficked? So, first and foremost, your safety and the safety of this potential victim are paramount. Don't try to intervene directly. This could put both you and the victim at risk. Instead, contact local authorities or a human trafficking hotline where trained professionals can take the appropriate steps to help out that victim and hopefully help to remove them from that situation.
Absolutely. If you're in the United States, then the National Human Trafficking Hotline is 1-888-37-37-888, or you can text help or info 233-733. You can also call the Rahab's Daughters hotline, which is 1-833-4 New Day 24/7. If you're outside the US, and in the UK, for example, you can call the Modern Slavery hotline at 0800-0-121-700. That's 0800-121-700. And it's open 365 days a year. You can also contact Rahab's Daughters at 0736 888-4489. And if you don't know what your hotline is, you can call one of these and we'll happily help you get in touch with law enforcement. But it's super important. Please pull out your phone and pop those numbers in, because it is important that you know how to reach us and how to reach a local hotline.
We'll make sure all those numbers and kind of any links to websites in the UK or the US are in the description on this video. So it's also really, really helpful to take note of any specific details that could assist authorities in their investigation, and especially when you're kind of calling up these hotlines. So This could be something like the description of the individuals involved, if you can get license plate numbers, or any suspicious behavior that you've observed. But please do remember, never put yourself in harm's way just to gather this information.
Raising awareness about the signs of trafficking is something that every community needs to do. And if you have a community group, if you belong to a church or a Bible study or the YMCA or any local organization, please, please, please talk to them about having one of us come and help you to see the signs and provide you with things like self-defense classes or other things that can help your communities be more empowered against human trafficking. And we are always happy to do this. You can call our US or UK offices or send an email to info@rahabsdaughters.org if you would like to learn more and have one of our community advocates come out and teach you more about anti-human trafficking in your community.
Absolutely, Sam. So the more people that are aware of those signs, the more likely it is that a trafficking victim can be identified and help. And remember, even if you're not sure, it is better to report your concerns than it is to stay silent. Your call really could be the one that could help save a life.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up today's episode, if we hope that you'll take this information to heart and share it with others, because human trafficking is a crime that thrives in the shadows, right? And by staying informed and vigilant, we can bring it to the light and protect people who are most vulnerable. It is so, so important. As someone who is a survivor of human trafficking, I only wish that law enforcement or medical professionals that I was in contact with would have noticed the signs and tried to help. It would have made all the difference in my life. And I hope that
Mm.
this will make a difference in the lives of other survivors.
So, thank you again for joining us today and for this crucial conversation. In our next episode, we'll be discussing a very important topic. So, the impact of trafficking on mental health.
So we hope you'll tune in for that insightful discussion. And if you found today's episode helpful, please share it with others and consider supporting us as we work to combat human trafficking.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and we'll see you next time on Human Trafficking in View.